We're going to do it today because we're finishing the book of Genesis. Now, how many siyumim occur during the year? That's my question. Oh, Cindy, you've jumped in there. Okay. Okay, Cindy jumped. Go ahead.
5, one for each book.
Oh, I'm so glad that you said that. No, but I'm so happy you said that. Okay, we have 5 didn't work. How many? See, Donna, you're sideways. You're going to make me very upset. Oh, there you
I'm
are.
sorry, I'm laying in bed.
Okay. How many siyumim are there during the course of the year? And the answer is 4, because there is no siyum following the close of the book of Deuteronomy. Oh, now it becomes totally obvious that Deuteronomy, what do? The moment we finish Deuteronomy, we start Genesis, we finish Devarim, we start Breshit. There's no break, there's no siyum, and now you know that, and that's exciting. We're going to begin preparing for the siyum. Okay, so I'd like us to turn to page 313 in the Plout, 313, and we're on Deuteronomy 49:28. But that's not going to be the final verse, okay? But I want this to lead to the final verse. Do we have someone who can read from 28 to 33? Do we have a volunteer? 28 to 33. 28. Okay, thank you, Donna.
All these are the 12 tribes of Israel. And thus did their fathers speak to them as he blessed them, blessing each one with a blessing that befit him. And he gave them a charge, saying, when I am gathered to my people, bury me with my ancestors in the cave that is in the field of Ephron the Hittite, in the cave that is in the field of Machpelah, facing Mamre, in the land of Canaan, the field that Abraham bought from Ephron the Hittite, as an inalienable gravesite. There they buried Abraham and his wife Sarah. There they buried Isaac and his wife Rebekah. And there I buried Leah. The purchase of the field and the cave in it was from the Hittites. When Jacob was done charging his sons, he drew his feet into the bed. He then breathed his last and was gathered to his people.
Okay, so here we are at the very end of Deuteronomy, and it's a section that is sometimes too small to really get involved with, but somehow in the middle of last night, I became, I don't know, interested in death, dying, burial, all kinds of good stuff. I was in a good mood. And okay, Aviva's there. Hi, Aviva, you're coming. Good. There are 2 sedras that lead off with the word life. Any of you know what they were? Hi, Harv, you're late. Any of you know what they are? Okay. There is this sedra, Vayechi. Okay, that's this sedra. There's one other sedra that has Chai or something in it as a name. What is it? I don't read lips, Risa. Are you saying something? Chaye Sarah. Now, the key question is, what do Chaye Sarah and Vayechi have in common? They both have life in the title. Donna.
Oh, I was going to say that they both have to do with somebody dying in the very
Yes,
beginning.
yeah, that's precisely it. So, I mean, you get ready to answer all these weird questions. Yes, they have Chai in the name of the Sedra, and they deal with death. Both of them, okay? Chaye Sarah, life of Sarah. Oops, she's died. Vayechi, Jacob, he dies. But there's so much more. I'd like us to turn to page 162. Page 162. I really did a lot of preparation for today. I must have been drinking heavily. 162. And we're in Genesis 25:7. These are the days of the years of Abraham's life. He lived 175 years. He breathed his last and died in good old age, full of age, and was gathered to his people. Buried in Machpelah, same thing. After the death of Abraham, God blessed his son Isaac. Okay, so here we have the description of Abraham's death. Do we have any other descriptions of a death in Genesis? Do we have any other descriptions of a death? We have Abraham here. We have Jacob here. Do we have any others? Any others? So we're going to turn to chapter 35, verse 16, page 228. And if it's still here, it was here last night. 228. Oh, it's Rachel. Okay. And when someone want to read 16 to 20, that's Rachel's death described in the Torah. Someone want to read 16 to 20? 16 to 20 once, 16 to 20 twice. Okay, Rebecca, thank you. Rebecca, you can't read it. We're dealing with Rachel. You're Rebecca. You can't read it. No, well, okay, we'll make an exception. Go ahead.
Then they journeyed from Bethel, and when they were still some distance from Ephrath, Rachel travailed, and she had hard labor. And when she was in her hard labor, the midwife said to her, "Fear not, for now you will have another son." And as her soul was departing, for she died, she called his name Ben-Oni, but his father called his name Benjamin. So Rachel died, and she was buried on the way to Ephrath, that is Bethlehem. And Jacob set up a pillar upon her grave. It is the pillar of Rachel's tomb, which is there to this day. Israel journeyed on and pitched his tent beyond the tent.
That's good. That's good. We did it. So now we have Rachel's death. Now, one last one, 229, which is right the next page. Jacob came to his father Isaac at Mamre near Kiryat Arba, near Hebron, where Abraham and Isaac had sojourned. The years of Isaac's life, 180. Isaac buried his last. He was gathered to his people, old and full of years, and his sons Esau and Jacob buried him. And you know that little half phrase, Esau and Jacob buried him, really important, okay? Because this meant that they came together, these rivals hated each other, whatever, but they came together for the burial of the father. Okay, so one of the things that is very interesting in all of these, just with Jacob, Jacob died and he was gathered to his people. That's in all of them, okay? Gathered to their people. And it doesn't say this about Rachel, but it certainly says it about Abraham and Isaac, Jacob. What does that mean? gathered to his people. Gathered to his people. Any thoughts? He was gathered, Donna. Okay, then Rebecca.
Well, he went to join his ancestors in the hereafter.
Okay, they didn't have a hereafter, if you will, technically. Okay, so went to join their ancestors. Rebecca.
I was going to say the same thing, ancestors.
Okay, Tamara. Hi, Shabbat Shalom, Tamara.
Hi, I'm sorry I'm late. I had computer problems. Actually, it's a very physical joining. In the ancient world, they buried people first in a cave or something like that. And they kept all the bones together. So when one person died, at a certain point, they put the bones somewhere up. And then the next person was joined, literally joined the family. And a family grave was a place where you physically, your remains were joined with your ancestors in the same space, a cave or a box, mostly a cave.
Now, it's very discouraging. You thought you'd get rid of that aunt after all those years, and then you find out you're buried next to her for all eternity.
Well, you're not buried next to her. You mingle. I
Yeah.
don't really like the image. I think it's kind of.
You like it?
I do. Yes, it's a real joining. It's not something, you become one, literally one. Over time, it takes a while, but you become one. Yeah.
There's some members of my family I have absolutely no desire to become. I know I have a bad attitude, but it is a beautiful concept. Gathered to his people or their people, and that's what happens. And you notice Machpelah over and over again. Who's the exception to Machpelah?
Rachel.
She died. She wanted to call her son Ben Oni, the son of my affliction, my travail, my difficulty. And no, Dad said, I don't want a kid to grow up called Ben Oni. We'll call him Binyamin. And so that's how Binyamin got to be Binyamin. But to me, fascinating. The parallel language for them all. Okay, when we go back to page 313, there's something else that verse 33, when Jacob was done charging his sons, he drew his feet into the bed. My first memory of death was the memory of my grandmother. I was 7 years old, and she was the last grandparent. They were last grandparent. And for whatever reason, no one thought whether I was too fragile to see this. My mother went running to her mother's house, and Grandma Rose was dead. And my first impression was that, in fact, she drew her knees toward her chest, and she was kind of like that. And later on, as I read these verses in Genesis, it's sort of like, okay, Grandma Rose did it the right way, and she drew her feet into the bed. You can take a moment. Do you have any first memories of when you saw first time someone deceased? Any thought about that? You don't have to. Okay, Eric.
Man, I planned the funeral for my father. It was the only one left of my family. And he looked very pale and withered, and not the same father that I knew, nor my mother. So it was oh, that hurts. It was traumatic to me because the trauma is still with me. I have post-traumatic stress syndrome from dealing with my father's death and my mother's death. You know what I mean? Because I am next on the line, and my little baby sister. So I am the caregiver of my family. I'm a kinless senior now, except my cousins trust taking care of me. But it was scary, man, when I saw my father there in the coffin and my mother in the coffin. Thank you very much for your therapy.
Yeah, and I'm not covered by Blue Cross. Okay, so
Are you in the network too? Are you a network practitioner?
I think that the comment of seeing a deceased person and relating it to oneself in the process is very, very normal. Very normal. Merle.
Well, my grandfather, and I was 10, and I was in their apartment when he died, and just it wasn't so much that it was commotion, but everybody that was there. I mean, my mother, my stepfather, my cousin, it was just I'll never forget it, though. When people die now, it's not as shocking, but that was a shock at that age.
Thank you. Okay, Risa, you're not going to tell the story about your grandmother, are you?
No,
I think you should.
my grandmother or my grandfather.
Well, your grandmother. Go ahead.
I remember her in the coffin with her glasses on, and that confused me. But I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, Risa's grandfather died in.
Oh, that's my grandfather. Yeah, well, it's my grandmother's story. So my grandfather died at home, but my father was sitting next to him. My grandmother was in the kitchen, and my father goes into the kitchen and says to my grandmother, "I'm very sorry, but Pa has died." And she said, "Are you sure?" And he said, "Yes." And she said, "And that is the end of kosher." But that was, my family's a little strange. But that wasn't my first death
What was your
experience.
first?
My mother took me when I was a little girl. I could have been, I'm going to say 8 years old, pretty young. And a little girl 2 houses down from us passed away from pneumonia. And my mother said, "There's a wake in the house, and I want you to see that death is something not to be afraid of." And she took me, and she wanted me to see this child in the coffin and not to be afraid, that it was peaceful, and death was part of life. And she was straight out. That's how she introduced me to death.
Wow, Ray.
Thank you. It's a great question. I appreciate that, Reese. I love that story about the end of kosher. That is a keeper. I'm going to hold on to that also. I do not exactly remember the first time I saw somebody dead, but I just wanted to speak to that about relating to the person dying from the perspective of someone I've mentioned once or twice in this group, that I'm on the Chevra Kaddish in one of the communities. We take care of the people in our community who die, and we prepare their their body for burial. And I'll also put in my momentary plug for Wilshire or any other communities represented here. Think seriously about doing this for the community. That's not just something traditionalists have to do. There's a great power and beauty and loving kindness to it. That said, I will say that my experience doing this work is I often feel connectedness with the person who has died and with the inevitability of all of our dying. And there is something, not just observing the person who has died, but physically moving and turning and washing, always very respectfully, but the weight and the effort and the physicality involved in all of these pieces of doing this work, there is a universality and a kind of workaday connection to it that is very powerful. There are many powerful feelings, but part of it, and not the least part of it, is it's like a group of people coming together to move a couch or to help with the paper drive or something that's physical, earthy labor that just strips away any intellectual distance and just puts you in a very humane physical space that connects you. And it is very powerful and very equaling and very beautiful. And I wanted to share that aspect of connectedness.
Okay, we're going to take one last comment and then go to the actual siyum. Jerry Udinsky, it's such a pleasure to have you. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
You want to share something with us?
Yeah, Rabbi, I thought you really brought up something very critical and important here about this parsha in particular. Let me get right to the point. Somehow after the destruction of the Second Temple, Judaism no longer believed in an afterlife. You know, you die, where do you go? You don't go anywhere. You know, clearly, in my opinion, based on your interpretation also, Rabbi, you know, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, they wanted to be buried in the same location. This frequently occurs with Chinese. They keep the urns in the same room. The urns of the ancient ancestors in the same room. And it's as if all those ancestors are still talking to each other and relating to each other. Only reason I'm mentioning it is that I think that Judaism has lost, after the Second Temple, we lost the concept of an afterlife. You know, where do we go, especially with people of our own age? What are you going to do after death? Are you going to see your wife in the afterlife, your children in the afterlife? Here, it seems to me, and based upon what you said, Rabbi, that the concept is that there is an afterlife and you want to be buried next to your kin, that you're still with them even after death. And that, to me, is what's so important about what you're bringing up here. And the question is, how did Jews leave? How did we lose that concept of an afterlife and lose the concept of being part of our family for eternity? So I'm wondering how you feel about that, Rabbi.
I can give a quick answer, or I'm going to give a 3-week course. So I'm going to opt for the quick answer. The quick answer is that by the time we get into the Second Temple, late Second Temple, and certainly into the rabbinic period, a belief in the afterlife, Jerry, grew and did not disappear. That was factually important. That a belief in the afterlife is one of the great answers to evil in the world, reward in the world to come, and then other kinds of things. Judaism did not abandon belief in an afterlife after the Second Temple. On the contrary, Judaism strengthened in a very important way a belief in afterlife. Again, this is a wonderful course, but not for today. Many Jews today question afterlife. That's another conversation. And there is a beauty in believing and holding tight to you don't lose someone forever. And I just want to thank you for raising it. But let's hold tight. Judaism did not abandon a belief in the afterlife following the Second Temple. Okay? So we're going to, fortunately, we're going to go to chapter 50, verse 22, page 316. 316. And here we come. Joseph dwelt in Egypt, he and his father's household, and Jacob lived 110 years. Okay, when I said Jacob lived 110 years, there is a note later on in the text. If you look at page 321, I was really busy last night. Look at 321. Risa, this one's for you. If you see in the right-hand column, Abraham, 175 years. Isaac, 180. Jacob, 147. Someone bothered to note that 175 is 7 times 5 squared. 180 is 5 times 6 squared. 147 is 3 times 7 squared. Okay? Now, look at what they do here. Adding the last column, 25, which is 5 squared, 36, which is 6 squared, 49, which is 7 squared, produces the figure 110, which was the lifespan of Joseph. And I don't know how people do this, okay? But now, by doing this mathematical computation, first of all, you notice that 7 squared, 5 squared, 3 squared, 5, 6, 7, beautiful symmetry. And then you add the sums of the far right column and you get Joseph. So now we have absolute proof that Joseph ranked with the patriarchs. And I will tolerate no challenge. Okay? This is absolute proof, if you like that. Okay. So Joseph lived under 10 years. Joseph saw Ephraim's grandchildren. The children of Machir, too, Manasseh's son, were born on Joseph's knees. Joseph then said to his kin, I am dying, but God will surely take care of you and bring you up out of this land to the land that God promised you, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Joseph forced Israel's children, his brothers, saying, God will surely take care of you. Bring my bones up from this place. Joseph died aged 110 years. They embalmed him, and he was put into a coffin in Egypt. And now, by reading the last words, okay, V'yachantu vayisem ba'aron b'mitzrayim. We say, Chazak, v'nitchazek. Let us be strong. Let us be strong. Let us strengthen one another. And I'm not going to go into the whole story again, but in my tradition, this is a time when you make a little bit of a motzi. In the old days, when we met in person, Cindy would bring pickled herring, creamed herring or pickled? Pickled.
Creamed.
Creamed. Okay. Cindy would bring creamed herring to the Chevra Torah, and that was a privileged thing. Now we don't meet in person, and so I have to buy my own, which, is okay. So I'm going to say the motzi over a piece of bread, and please notice the herring is here, okay? Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Then we used to have a lot of people bring a lot of food. It was like a big buffet. You have to get back to being in person. And my father owned a delicatessen in a restaurant. I love herring. It connects me to my past. And then we have plum brandy, which connects to another story in my life. When I used to do it, Eric, this comes from Central Synagogue. When I was doing Chevra Torah in Central Synagogue, and Bernie Silverman brought Slivovitz. And so instead of saying Borei Pri HaGafen, I'm going to have to say Borei Pri HaEtz, because it's a plum. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Borei Pri HaEtz.
Boy, Bernie was really a mensch. Bernie was the greatest mensch besides my father and mother.
He really, really was. He run a whole national program, the Jewish Autonomous Society, for the National Federation of Temple Brotherhoods. He ran it nationally. He was deeply invested in college kids. But to point out that he has been devastating me 4 times a year by having me drink Slivovitz, which, ladies and gentlemen, is very high proof. If you need to launch a rocket ship, you may use Slivovitz. Okay? I am slowly deteriorating having had my Slivovitz.
Okay, I don't have Slivovitz. I just had some grappa. I hope that's okay.
Grappa. Okay. Okay. No, thank you. Okay. Kevin, that does that. I'm not going to ask what everyone else is drinking, but if you fail to have your beverage with you, don't forget you can always this afternoon pick up the Torah, read a little bit, say a bracha, and drink out of ritual needs. And I think that this is terrific. And for those, boy, did I learn a lesson a long time ago. And for those who choose, for whatever reason, not to drink alcohol, that's wonderful. I'm having trouble breathing here. And that's wonderful. And grape juice or anything else you do, Snapple, whatever else you do, you don't have to drink alcohol to be Jewish. Okay? I used to, at every bar mitzvah, we had real wine on the bima for everyone on the bima. And right before the bacher or the girl said the Kaddish, I would pass out the wine thoughtlessly until someone said to me, I am not able to drink alcohol. Don't put that in front of me. And I learned a really big lesson. They never taught us, Tamara, in rabbinic school how to deal with people who have difficulty with Kiddush wine. Of course, then you move into another situation. I'm not going to mention Wilshire Boulevard Temple, in which they only serve grape juice, which is a little bit of an exaggeration. We're going to move now into the regular material. Any questions? Anything that someone, okay, Rebecca, please.
I thought embalming was against Jewish law.
In most circumstances, embalming is against Jewish law. I would carefully point out, though, there are many in our ultra-Orthodox world who won't believe this, but in the time of Joseph, there was no halakha. There was no Jewish law, and there was nothing so defined. But embalming was the tradition, obviously, of Egypt, a very important tradition. And later they will bring up Joseph's, it says, bones from Egypt for burial in Canaan. So he eventually makes it home, if you will. But you are correct in terms of Jewish law as understood today forbids embalming. There are certain circumstances where this becomes less demanding because there are, like shipping international, a body, whatever, there are certain countries have certain laws and regulations, and we have to deal with that, okay? But yes, that's true. Any other comment before we actually go on with our text? I'd like to mention that Wednesday, January 10th, current events. Wednesday, January 10th, current events. And I have received a personal message from Bibi, who tells me that we will yet have interesting things to discuss on January 10th. So it's going to be ongoing concern. And at this point, we add our prayers for the release of the hostages, as many as are alive. And do we have to say, and the bodies of the deceased, which are also being held. Okay, any checking in before we do text? Anything that needs to be shared with the community?
I saw some excuse me. I saw some genetics in Jacob's blessings because I saw. I'm sorry to bring it up, but I don't want to miss it. Like each blessing is a trait of each individual. So each individual was like the organelle in the organism. Each had a specific function for his survival. If everybody cooperates, the organism survives. If anybody doesn't cooperate, the organism fails. So Jewish unity was have all the tribes working together for community survival.
I think that's a very interesting concept. Let's at least leave it with this. That
I'm sorry to bother you about that.
No. We skip past the various blessings, noting that they are different for different tribes, people. And what Eric is pointing out is the multiplicity of blessings, the multiplicity of community is natural in the natural world. Survival depends upon difference as well as pulling together. So I like that. And
sorry to bother you, but I'm a trained microbiologist and a geneticist, amateur geneticist. So it struck me as biologically sound.
Thank you. We go now to page 307, in which we're now going to do study of the text. And 307, 48:8. Here is the scene. Here is the scene when Jacob is being asked to bless Joseph's sons. How many of you have been to the Hadassah Hospital and the Chagall windows? Okay. There is something very unusual about the windows if you pay attention. How many windows are there supposed to be?
They have different colors.
Rainbow,
excuse me. I'm sorry. I'm a visual thinker. When I saw the in Hadassah windows, I said Joseph in the Technicolor Dreamcoat.
Okay, now the Hadassah windows are 12. How many tribes are there? Either 11 or 13. because there is no Joseph tribe. Joseph, one of the 12, doesn't get a tribe. What does Joseph get instead of a tribe? His 2 sons are adopted in this scene by Jacob as Jacob's sons. So there's so many common mistakes in all of this. For example, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. So it's got to be that Rachel and Leah had all of the 12 sons, right? No, they didn't. There are 2 other women involved, and unfortunately, we don't spend a lot of time thinking about them. But there were 4 mothers in Jacob's lifetime. And there were 11 tribes plus 2 tribes because Jacob adopted Joseph's 2 sons. So you look at the Chagall windows, and what do you see? A slash, and there are the emblem of a 1, okay, and the emblem of the other of the 2 sons are on a single window. So if you don't pay attention, there are only 12 windows. But if you look at the windows carefully, there are 13 tribes. So next time some rabbi stands up before the community and speaks of the 12 tribes of Israel, politely raise your rabbi, actually, there were 13. Okay? But then I hope the rabbi can handle the question. Okay, Eric, a quick one. We have to move on.
Okay, I'm sorry, but as an amateur genetics, I see a family tree made up, each of the tribes, and each one, I reckon, and I could draw a connection between the genetics of the tribes and the spies too. Judah had a good vibe, and Caleb and Joshua had a good vibe because Joshua was a offspring of Ephraim. So I got the genetic pattern that they inherited from the family tree.
Okay, let me just say that when somebody moves ahead of my lesson plan and says something which I had planned to say, but you're correct.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Good. Donna.
Why doesn't Joseph get a tribe?
Tamara, you're the expert. Joseph get a tribe?
He kind of has 2. He's 2 for the price of 1.
Yeah, and they're the biggest tribes too.
But there is no Joseph tribe. I mean, you're right. And that doesn't seem fair. Tamara, do you have any?
No. I mean, if you talk about actual history, the story is written backward. So there were those 2 territorial groups, Manasseh and Ephraim, and so they had to be woven into the story. But I haven't looked at it. It's a really good, wonderful question. I'm sure the rabbis have many midrashim on it, but I never looked at them.
So now we have another term paper for a college student. That's
sort of like if they're committed to the number 12, like there has to be 12 portions of land. Levi doesn't get any land. So somehow you got to make up for him. So you divide Joseph into 2. but I don't know if that has anything to do with it.
No, but it's a great question. It is a question. Howard.
I read a recent article in the Biblical Archaeological Review about the 12 tribes of Israel, which asserted that actually it's very inconsistent. In different places, there are different numbers of tribes and there are different names and so on. It's not at all a consistent story.
So you read the BAR regularly?
I subscribe to it. It's very interesting.
Very impressive.
No, it's just like a magazine. It's really fun.
Okay. I don't know if anyone's ever, I mean, by the way, the BAR got involved in all kinds of politics as well. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
It's a serious journal. Okay. When Israel, and we're not going to go into it, but it's fascinating, Jacob, Israel, flipping back and forth here. Okay, as a name, Israel saw Joseph's sons, and he said, Mi Elah. The Hebrew is very clear. Mi Elah. Who are these? There's no way to interpret it otherwise. Who are these? Very, very, very interesting. The rabbis have to deal with it. And one of the answers that the rabbis give to this is Jacob, at the moment that he looked at Joseph's sons, was blinded by an experience of prophecy. That is, that from both sons, wicked kings will descend. Both sons, in their tribal creations, bring forth Jeroboam, Achav, Ahab, and Jehu. Wicked kings of Israel were to be descended from these two. And the rabbi said, when Jacob said, who are these? It's because he was struck by a prophetic vision that blinded him, because blessing these kids, in a sense, is extending a blessing through the generations to three wicked kings. I'm not going to deal with that. I mean, it's Jacob still says, who are these? Joseph said to his father, and in case you're wondering, these simple phrases are complicated. Joseph said to his father, they are my son whom God has given me here. And the rabbi said, do you know what Joseph was doing? No. What was Joseph doing? Joseph held up his ketubah to his father to show his father that Joseph's wife had converted to Judaism and signed a ketubah so that these kids are authentically Jewish. Anyone want to comment on that rabbinic insight? Howard?
What language would that ketubah have been written in?
You know the authentic ketubah is written in Aramaic, Howard. What are you asking?
Well, I just question whether they had ketubahs back then.
Howard, they didn't have ketubahs. I mean, they didn't have ketubahs.
I was taught when I studied at Chabad that they had yeshivas in the desert. Of course, that's Exodus. We haven't got to that yet. And that the text used the square Hebrew letters too, like today.
Do you know where Isaac went after the failed sacrifice? Where did Isaac go, Howard?
I'm sorry.
To
Ah!
yeshiva.
I'm sorry.
To the yeshiva.
Okay, Cindy, do you
He
remember
went to
who's
study.
yeshiva?
The yeshivas that
Who-
didn't exist, but he went there.
Who's yeshiva?
The yeshivas. He went to study.
He went to study in the yeshiva Shem Ve'ever. He went to a yeshiva started by Noah's son. There may be a little bit of chronological difficulty here, and I will admit it despite the Slivovitz. But Isaac went to study in a yeshiva. Joseph held up a ketubah, okay? And the rabbis were happy with their answers, okay? Because in the real world, the system has to work. Okay, now we're going to move ahead because Israel's eyes had grown clouded with age. He could no longer see. Joseph brought the boys over to him, whereupon he kissed and hugged them. And now the rabbis defined another rule in case you have run out of Jewish rules. Now, please remember this. To effectively bless or to effectively curse, you have to have a clear line of vision. If Jacob could not see clearly, his blessing wouldn't hold. How do the rabbis prove this? Yeah, I had fun last night. Okay. Do you remember Balaam? Remember Balaam? And Balak went to Balaam, and this is the book of Numbers, and says, curse the Israelites, whatever. And Balaam gave a gift to every cantor in the world, saying, Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov, how goodly are your tents of Jacob, your dwellings, O Israel. But Balaam couldn't do it from his home. Balaam had to be moved to a vantage point where he could directly see the Israelite encampment. And only then could he bless and curse. And the rabbi, please have patience with me. I worked on this. The rabbis say that this proves if you don't have a line of sight, your blessing or your curse of another won't work. So if you've worried about that, like you try to put a curse on somebody and it didn't hold, ask yourself whether you had a clear line of sight when you issued the curse. And the odds are, I got hands up all over the place. Please, we're learning Jewish things here. Cindy?
Isaac didn't have a clear vision when he blessed Jacob.
Your point?
It doesn't support what you just said.
Thank you.
Then the blessing didn't hold.
Donna, I'm not going to defend this. Give me a break. Donna.
I had the same thought as Cindy. It's like, well, that means the whole children of Israel are kind of really not blessed. So kind of throws the whole thing off.
Okay, that's two people I won't call on again. Rebecca.
Line of sight is different than clear vision.
You are giving me such a hard time. I'm a nice person. I'm a little bit unsettled with the Slivovitz. Yes, you're right. So what? Okay? Yes. Yes, Rebecca, you are correct. Merle, go ahead. Jump on me also.
I'm just wondering, I'm not jumping on anyone because all of this is bizarre to me. How does that fit in the real world today? What is line of vision if it's corrected? What if it's corrected vision? I mean, there's a whole lot of stuff here from then to now as far as vision and how it's managed.
I never thought about this, but now I'm going to have to think about it as we end our conversation. I went to an optometrist this past week, and my vision is somewhere, well, I have no vision left in my left eye, and my right eye has about 30-40%. I never thought about, but thank you for raising this, Merle. I no longer can effectively curse. And I find that a great lack, and I'm upset. Okay? We're going to have, there's so much more in here. I wanted to say to you that in verse 16, how can I not do this? In verse 16, the angel rescued me. I wanted to talk about that. We're not going to. And let them greatly multiply within the land. Ladies and gentlemen, I looked up the word in Hebrew for greatly multiply. Vayidgu. Vayidgu. And much to my dismay, I don't recognize the word. I don't recognize the verb. I don't know how they translated it until I read a rabbinic commentary. Vayidgu is apparently to be derived from dag, fish. And thus they will multiply like fish. And with that creative and exciting translation, we're going to move to Kaddish. I don't want to miss saying to you, have a wonderful and blessed new year, a year of health, a year of love, a year of compassion, a year of healing, a year of peace for all of us, for the state of Israel, for the Jewish people, for the Palestinian people, for the Ukrainian people. I'm hard pressed with the Russian people, but okay. May it be a year of blessing for all of us. And I need to get some black coffee into me. Those who have passed away during the past month, Marilyn Baum, May Bendit, Rosie Burson, Harold Cohn Jr., Ravella Dunner, Rabbi David Ellenson, J. Kenneth Gordon, Barry Grief, Rachel, Ray Hoffman, Bruce Jacobson, Tom Judah, Naomi Malin, Edward Meltzer Jr., Donald Motley, Stephen Reed, Ronald Saul, Jacqueline Tenzer. Excuse me. Yort sites that have occurred during the past week. Annette Abrams, Jack Edelstein, Sheldon Anderson, Marilyn August, Jackie Banchik, Isidore Bendit, Sarah Chaya Berger, Matthew Burke, Sonia Burson, Alexander Braun, Katarina Braun, Betty Brody, Ray Freda Brown, Louise Brownell, Richard Cacciato, Bobby Clare, James Clark, Eva Coden, Robert Cohn, Sam Cohn, William Cohn, Alfred Coleman, Karen Complin, Ann Cutrow, Arnold Dauber, Arthur Dahm, Sarah Davis, Stuart Davis, Susan Dissner, Irene Rose Dunner, Melvin Edelstein, Fred Ehrlich, Alona Liashar, Alan Eppenstein, Michael Feynman, Raymond Faith, Robert Farkas, Sidney Feldman, Vivian Fern, Eve Yavil Fine, Ronnie Fink, Bernice Fisher, Henriette Fleischer, Henrietta Fleischer, Vera Fox, Alan Frank, Benjamin Franklin, John Freisleben, Barry Friedman, Julius Friedman, Marilyn Friedman, Nejatola Godsian, Harry Gilbert, Lillian Gottstein, Abram Grosser, Maluk Halimi, Joseph Robert Hecht, Eugene Hirsch, Irving Hirsch, Isidore Horn, Betty Eisen, Susan Gay Eisenberg, Ronna Jaffe, Stan Kaltman, Ann Kaplowitz, Herman Karp, Francis Katz, Barbara Kessler, Esther Kessler, Lee Klein, Jerry Kleinman, Henrietta Cover, Florence Isabel Culwin, Luna Laska, Rosera Liebson, Helen Levin, Rose Levin, Herman Levitt, William Lewis, Marion Lieberman, Al Mandel, Ruth Marin, Samuel Morgan, Selma Moyer, Don Nathanson, Samuel Newman, Don Newmark, Nora Nordell, Alvin Novick, Armand Offel, Joyce Austin, Michael Patterson, Louise Perlman, George Paness or James Paness, Gertrude Rose, Edith Rosenbaum, Regina Ross, Beth Lauren Shapira, George Schuckman, Leon Schwab, Michael Sokol, Ruth Green Stamler, Louis Stern Jr., Lisa Walder, Jordan Weber, Eva Ruth Weissenberg, Isidore Werber, Rosalie Woldenberg, Joyce Wolf, Virginia Wolf, Yaakov Yitzchak, Joshua Young. If there are other names to be remembered at this time, I ask that you speak those names aloud or you speak them in your hearts. And I do apologize for any mispronunciations. We bear in mind as well the names of those who died in defense of the United States, those who died in defense of the state of Israel, those who died through senseless and horrible acts of terror, those for whom there was no one to say Kaddish. We embrace them all and we join together in the words of Kaddish. Yitgadal
Bris Kadash.
Shemei Rabbah V'alma Chirute V'amlich Malchute V'chayechon Uvyomechon V'chaye Dechol Beit Yisrael Ba'agala V'zman Kariv Imru Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba Mavarach Le'olam Le'omei Almaya Yitbarach V'yishtabach V'yitpa'ar V'yitramam V'yitnaseh V'yitadar V'yitaleh V'yitalal Shemei Kudusha Barichu Le'ela Min Kol Birchata V'shirata Tushbechata V'nechamata Da'amiran B'alma V'imru Amen. Yehi Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya V'chayim Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'imru Amen. Oseh Shalom B'imromav Hu Yaseh Shalom Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'imru Amen. May God, who makes peace in the high places, make peace in our hearts, make peace in our homes, make peace in the household of Israel, make peace among all the families and nations of earth, and let us say, Amen. Have a wonderful new year. Blessings with your family and for you, and peace for everybody. Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat
Thank
Shabbat
you.
Shalom,
Happy
everybody.
secular New Year.
Happy New
Thank
Year.
Have a wonderful year.
Sending you love.
Back at you.
Back at me. Thank you. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Here we go.